Have you ever felt like your life was quietly unraveling behind the scenes? Like everything you counted on plans, people, even your sense of direction started to dissolve without warning. It's easy to think, I must have done something wrong. To wonder, am I out of alignment? Is this some kind of test? But what if it's not a test at all? What if it's preparation, see? When the foundation of your life starts to shake, it doesn't always mean you're falling apart. Sometimes it means you're being realigned gently, intentionally, even if it feels chaotic on the surface. Because the truth is the version of you who asked for more, the one who dreamed bigger, who whispered to the universe, "I'm ready." That version needs space to emerge. And everything that doesn't resonate with that version, it has to go. That's not punishment. That's precision. It may look like things are slipping through your fingers, but what's actually slipping is the version of you that can't hold what's coming next. This isn't failure. This is the field responding to your frequency. You asked for a higher timeline. Now, reality is adjusting to catch up with your signal. And yes, it can feel like loss. But underneath that loss, something powerful is forming. So before you panic, pause. Before you blame yourself, breathe. You're not being tested. You're being tuned. Here's what most people don't realize about manifestation. It's not all light and vision boards and perfect affirmations. Sometimes, the most important part feels like everything is falling apart. Because when you start to shift, when your frequency begins to rise, even just a little, the quantum field listens. And it responds by reorganizing your entire reality to match the new you. That part of you, the one that's scared, that clings, that resists change, it was never meant to thrive. It was built to protect you. Built in moments when survival mattered more than expansion, when fitting in was safer than standing tall. But you're not there anymore. What you need now is not more protection. It's trust. Deep, rooted trust in the version of you that is becoming. You're not stuck. You're suspended between identities, between timelines, between what was and what's not yet formed. You're standing in a doorway with no sign above it, only a quiet knowing in your chest that you can't turn back. And yes, that space feels uncomfortable. But it's not because you're broken. It's because you've outgrown the old map. Your old coping mechanisms don't work here. The way you used to overthink, overwork, or push through no longer serves. The universe knows this. The field knows this. So it waits. Not to punish you, but to protect the integrity of your becoming. It waits for your energy to stop scattering, for your signal to become coherent, not just emotionally, but vibrationally. Because the quantum doesn't respond to your goals, your plans, your affirmations. It responds to your frequency. And when that frequency is tangled with fear disguised as ambition, with desperation disguised as discipline, the field can't deliver. That's why trying too hard often pushes what you want further away. Because trying, when born from fear, is resistance in disguise. You're not here to force your way into alignment. You're here to feel your way into it. And that feeling doesn't come from rituals. It comes from noticing where you leak power, from catching yourself when you're doubting your own enoughness, from reclaiming the pieces of you that keep outsourcing peace to a future moment. When the thing finally happens, then I'll rest. No, that's not how alignment is built. It begins in the space between your thoughts, in the stillness beneath the striving, in the breath that says, even now, even here, something is shifting. What if this isn't delay? What if this is detox? What if this is the pruning before the bloom? The sacred pause before the real you rises. Maybe the universe isn't holding you back, but holding space. Space for the version of you who can finally receive without collapsing under the weight of it. That's not a test. That's trust in motion. That's life meeting your signal. Not out of duty, but resonance. You're not being punished. You're being positioned for something greater than you imagined. The rough edges formed by fear are being smoothed out. The noise you used to chase is being silenced. And the lies that told you weren't ready, they're dissolving. Because now, you are. Still, I know it doesn't feel magical. It feels raw, lonely, like standing barefoot in the dark with nothing solid to hold on to. But this in-between, this sacred discomfort, is the true threshold of change. It's where the old story finally becomes too tight, and the new story is still being written. It's the inhale before the leap, the silence before the shift. And it's here, right here, that your real power starts to rise. Because when the field senses that you're no longer trying to rush into your next chapter, but are willing to be fully present with what's here, it responds. Not out of obligation, out of resonance. It begins to shape a life that matches your new stillness, your new truth. So if things feel unstable, let them. If life feels slow, heavy, or unclear, trust it. It means you're entering the most important part of all the becoming. The field is conscious. It's not passive. It's not mechanical. It's listening. It's adjusting to the new frequency you've already started to radiate. Something in you has already changed. And now life is simply catching up. So let's move forward together. Not with force, with trust. There's a common misconception that the universe sends tests to see if you're strong enough. But the quantum field doesn't test. It responds. It's not measuring your worth. It's reading your signal. And when that signal shifts, even slightly, everything built on your old vibration begins to dissolve, not because you failed, but because you outgrew it. The field doesn't ask, "Are you ready?" It doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It listens to your energy. And when your energy says, "I'm here, I'm aligned," the field echoes back, "I hear you." Let me reflect that, but that reflection doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it looks like breakdowns, like doors closing, like things falling away before they fall into place. Not because you're being rejected, but because your old foundation is being replaced gently, precisely. Your external world is always trailing your inner world. That's why change feels delayed. But it's not delayed. It's recalibrating. So when you stop broadcasting from fear, from scarcity, from lack, the field doesn't scold you, it adjusts. It pauses. It clears the signal. And that clearing, most people call it being tested. But you're not being evaluated. You're being upgraded. And every upgrade requires a clearing. Just like your body purges toxins when healing, your energy field purges what no longer fits. Habits, relationships, beliefs, identities, each one begins to dissolve. And in that space between release and receiving, that's where most people panic. Because the mind hates emptiness. It wants to fill the silence with stories, with reasons, with blame. But the field loves emptiness because emptiness is potential. It's pure, unfiltered signal. It's where new timelines collapse into form. That's how quantum reality works. Every time you emit a new vibration, you're not just wishing, you're instructing the universe. You're telling the field, This is who I am now. This is what I'm ready for. And if your outer life doesn't match yet, it starts to shift. But first, it dismantles what no longer belongs. That dismantling might look like chaos, but it's not destruction, it's alignment. You're not losing what's meant for you. You're releasing what can't come with you. And yes, that process can feel like a storm, because anything you once clung to for identity, any job, title, relationship, belief that once made you feel safe will be challenged by your new vibration. This is why manifestations often arrive after the storm, not before it. Because the storm shakes loose what you would have held on to forever, even if it no longer served you. It pulls you out of loops, patterns, places you outgrew, not to punish, but to purify, to make space for coherence. And when your signal is clear, when your being is stiller than your mind, the field no longer hesitates. It reflects, instantly. But until then, it waits. Not out of delay, out of devotion. It waits for you to stop forcing, to stop pretending, to stop flickering between trust and fear. Because the field doesn't collapse based on words. It collapses based on vibration. And vibration doesn't lie. So when things fall apart, don't ask. Why me ask? What is this making space for? Don't assume you're being rejected. Assume you're being redirected. Don't fear the silence, learn to listen through it. Because the silence between your old self and your next reality is not empty. It's full of motion you can't yet see. And if you can hold your center in that space, if you can stay coherent while everything else shifts around you, the field will have no choice but to meet you where you are. Because as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, the quantum is a mirror for your internal state. But it's not just a mirror, it's intelligent. It feels your fear. It feels your truth. It knows when you're faking it, and it knows when you've truly surrendered, and when you no longer need the outcome to feel whole. That's when the outcome begins to form, when you stop grasping and start anchoring. Reality bends. Anchoring takes presence, real presence, the kind that doesn't flinch when things get quiet, the kind that doesn't reach for distractions when nothing outside seems to move. Because anchoring is not about holding on. It's about becoming so grounded in who you are becoming that you no longer need external proof to feel aligned. You stop chasing. You stop bargaining. You stop performing trust and begin embodying it. This is where the field pays attention, not to how loud your affirmations are, but to how deeply your nervous system believes. I am already safe. And that shift changes everything. Because when your system stops bracing for disappointment, when it stops flinching at the unknown, your energy opens. Like a locked door finally clicking open after years of trying the wrong key. You don't need to pound on it anymore. You just walk through. That's what it means to anchor. Not to fight for your future, but to become the version of you who already lives there. And when you do, when that version becomes your default state, not just in meditation, but in traffic, in hard conversations, in moments of doubt, then the field listens differently. It bends. It bends not because you begged, not because you finally got the ritual just right, but because you stopped pretending and started resonating. The moment you stop grasping for outcomes and start breathing into your own frequency, that's the moment the field responds. Not slowly, not someday. Now. But that kind of power doesn't feel like a surge. It feels like stillness. A quiet, unshakable stillness that says, even without the result, I'm whole. And in that stillness, you become magnetic, you become clear, you become real. You're no longer trying to bend reality with force. You're inviting it with coherence. And reality, it doesn't argue with coherence, it aligns with it. There's a moment in this journey when everything inside you wants to panic, but instead, you pause. You breathe. You stop chasing, stop gripping, stop forcing, and you say, quietly, courageously, even here, I trust. That's the turning point. The moment your energy stops begging for answers and begins to anchor into knowing. Because anchoring takes more than words. It takes presence. It takes stillness. And it takes the kind of courage that doesn't look brave from the outside, but shifts everything on the inside. Because when you stop trying to fix reality, stop trying to prove your worth or control the outcome, your frequency settles. And in that stillness, clarity rises. In that clarity, there's access. And in that access, manifestation becomes less about chasing and more about alignment. Less about effort and more about readiness. You're not here to force reality to obey your will. You're here to become the version of you who doesn't need to demand, because your vibration already invites. So no, you're not failing because things are falling away. You're succeeding at a level deeper than your ego can measure. You're resonating with a future that used to feel like fantasy, but now lives in your bones. You're becoming the version of you who no longer asks, is it working, because you feel the shift in your body. That's when the field starts to respond. Not to what you're doing, but to who you are. That's when it stops listening to your rituals and starts echoing your essence. And here's the beauty: your true self isn't trying to force the future. It's inviting it. It's standing still with open hands. Not because it's passive, but because it's powerful. This isn't about doing more. This is about becoming magnetic through coherence, through stability, through trust. Now let's go deeper. There is a strange, sacred space between letting go and receiving. It's not glamorous. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible. It's that moment after the surrender and before the arrival when nothing seems to be happening. You've done the work. You've aligned your energy. You've released what no longer serves. And now, there's silence. No confirmation, no movement, just emptiness. But that emptiness, it's not failure. It's not delay. It's recalibration. It's the quantum zone where timelines are rewritten not through action, but through embodiment. Not by what you're doing, but by who you're becoming. And most people don't recognize it. They panic. They retreat. They try harder. They dig up the seed to see if it's growing. But the field doesn't reward urgency. It rewards coherence. And coherence requires stillness. That's why this moment, this uncomfortable, invisible stretch, is the most important part of the process. Because it reveals everything. It reveals whether you trust your frequency or whether you only trusted the outcome. It reveals whether you can be still when your mind demands motion. Whether you can soften when your ego wants to sprint. Whether you can embody what you've called in before it arrives. You're not stuck. You're suspended, floating between timelines. The old one is dissolving, you can feel it. The new one is assembling, you can sense it. But you're not fully in either. And that feeling, that strange in-betweenness, that's the sign you're in transition. That's the sign your system is learning to hold more truth, more peace, more possibility. Yes, it feels strange. Like being no one, like having no map. Because your identity is shifting. You're no longer who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. This is what spiritual maturity feels like. Not fireworks, not breakthroughs, but quiet integration, deep, steady embodiment. And the field is watching. Not with eyes, but with resonance. It's listening to your energy when you're not performing. It's reading the shape of your stillness. Because when you stop pushing, your true frequency begins to rise. That's the frequency that creates. Not the one you force, the one you stabilize, the one you live from when no one is watching. Neville Goddard called it the Sabbath. The sacred pause between assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled and watching it crystallize into form. And in that pause, the goal isn't to do more. It's to hold the vibration longer, to stop needing proof and become the proof, to stop seeking confirmation because your body already knows the answer. So if it feels like nothing is happening, good. That means something deeper is aligning. That means your system is no longer chasing, it's holding. That means the foundation is shifting. That your nervous system is learning how to hold the new without collapsing back into the old. It means your timeline is recalculating in real time, and your only job is to stay coherent. That doesn't mean being perfect. It means being honest. Can you sit in uncertainty without running from it? Can you hold the energy of peace, even when there's no result yet? Can you trust the timeline is forming around your being, not your efforts? That's the quantum pause. That's the moment the field waits for, not out of punishment, but out of precision. Because until your frequency becomes consistent, the field won't collapse into form. And that consistency, it's not measured by intensity. It's measured by ease, by how lightly you hold the vision, by how gently you carry the belief. The more you grasp, the more you tell the field, I don't believe this is real. And the field doesn't respond to your words. It responds to that. So stop grasping. Start anchoring. Start living like it's already done. Not for the field, but for you. Because when your nervous system believes it's safe to receive, the universe moves instantly. That's where the breakthrough lives. Not in the doing, but in the being. Not in the outcome, but in your readiness to hold it. And that readiness, it's not proven by mantras. It's proven by neutrality. When the outcome no longer defines your worth, that's when it arrives. When your joy isn't delayed until something happens, but accessed now, that's when it manifests. When you stop bracing for disappointment and start living from trust. The new timeline locks in. The quantum isn't slow. You're just stabilizing. Let it take the time it needs to match the precision of your request. Let the unseen rearrange. Let the silence teach you. Let the space you're in, no matter how unfamiliar, become your training ground for trust. Because trust is the energy that collapses timelines faster than anything else. And here's what happens next. You stop seeing discomfort as failure. You start recognizing it as feedback. You begin to notice that the more you try to force change, the more resistance you feel. That's not because you're broken. That's because the field doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to resonance. And resonance isn't born from urgency. It's born from surrender. But surrender has been misunderstood. It's not passive. It's not giving up. It's choosing, moment by moment, to let coherence lead. To trust the timeline your soul already chose, even when your mind doesn't understand it. That's power. That's what stabilizes your signal. So when everything feels out of sync, start here. First, stop interpreting discomfort as danger. Most of what you call fear is just unfamiliarity. You're not scared because something's wrong. You're scared because something is new. Because your vibration has shifted, but your nervous system hasn't caught up yet. That's not sabotage, that's integration. Let it happen. Second, stop asking, how do I fix this? And ask, what part of me is still resisting this? Because every time you try to fix what the field is already rearranging, you're sending noise into the signal. The more you interfere, the more you delay. But when you soften, when you breathe, trust, release, you become magnetic. Not because you're doing more, but because you're finally still enough to receive. That's where Abraham Hicks brings clarity. You can't be in receiving mode and resistant mode at the same time. It's not about intensity. It's about allowing. And allowing isn't passive. It's intentional. It's the decision to trust even when you can't see it. To embody trust not as a concept, but as a frequency. So what does that look like? It looks like waking up and not asking what's missing, but what am I radiating? It looks like watching your thoughts, but not believing all of them. It looks like noticing the tension in your body and softening, instead of spiraling. It looks like holding your peace, whether the manifestation has arrived or not. Because the quantum field doesn't just want to give you what you want. It wants to see who you become while you wait. That's the preparation. That's the refinement. Not through punishment, but through precision. Your nervous system is your antenna. The clearer the signal, the quicker the response. That's why things fall apart before they fall into place. Because the field won't build a new timeline on an old vibration. It will wait. Patiently, silently, until you stop vibrating from memory and start vibrating from now. Because now is the only moment where your future can begin. So here's a shift you can make today. Stop asking for proof. Become the evidence. Stop waiting to feel safe. Become the space where safety already lives. Stop looking for alignment. Live like you're already aligned. You don't need another step, another plan, or perfectly timed ritual. What you truly need is stillness, the kind of stillness that holds your whole being like a quiet sunrise. The kind that whispers, look how far you've come. You don't need to do more. You don't need to fix what's not broken. What you need is to stop resisting who you're already becoming, because that version of you, they're already aligned. They've been waiting for you on the other side of fear, of doubt, of old programming. All you're learning now is how to meet them in the field, open-hearted and unafraid. So take a breath. Let it land. If your path feels unfamiliar, if you feel like you've stepped off the edge of the map, that's not a mistake. That's how all new realities begin. You've simply reached the edge of the known, and now you're walking into the quantum. And if the silence feels loud, good. It means the field is listening. It means the signal you've been sending is finally clear enough to hear. And if something in this message is speaking directly to a part of you that's been holding on quietly, patiently, then mark this moment. Let it imprint. Let it echo. Say it with me, I trust the process. Not because it's always comfortable, not because it's predictable, but because it's precise. Because it's not a punishment, it's preparation. It's not a test, it's tuning. In the next section, we won't close this with answers. We'll close it with remembrance, because you were never here just to survive your life. You were meant to embody it fully, to step into the frequency you were born to carry, the one the universe has been preparing you to hold all along. And by now, something inside you has shifted. Not because I gave you something new, but because you remembered something ancient. You're not being tested. You're being trusted. The field isn't watching to see if you fail. It's reshaping itself around the you that's emerging. And sometimes that reshaping feels like friction, like resistance, like grief. But that's not punishment. That's purification. You asked for alignment. Now the field is clearing anything that can't hold that alignment. And yes, that can hurt. Not because you're broken, but because you're shedding the layers you never needed. The masks. The old timelines. The beliefs you outgrew long ago. The field is precise. It doesn't move by pressure. It moves by truth. And when your truth becomes louder than your fear, the quantum moves. That's what this is. Not failure activation, a slow, steady emergence of coherence inside you. Your nervous system stabilizing in a new identity. One that doesn't need to prove anything. One that doesn't need to perform. Just be. That's the shift. That's the signal. Because receiving was never about deserving. It's always been about readiness. And the universe is already poised to give you everything you've asked for. It's not waiting on your effort. It's waiting on your clarity. And that clarity doesn't live in your affirmations. It lives in your frequency, in your willingness to soften instead of grasp, to trust instead of chase, to anchor instead of perform. This is no longer about asking when. It's about living from the vibration that says, now. Because when belief becomes your being, timelines collapse. When you embody the frequency of having, it begins to form. You weren't meant to hustle your way into worthiness. You came to remember that you've always been in tune, that you were never here to chase your manifestations, but to meet them in resonance. And resonance doesn't always arrive in fireworks. Sometimes it moves slowly through subtle unraveling, through silence that stretches longer than comfort allows. But beyond that stillness is power. Not the kind that shouts, the kind that radiates, not the emotional spikes that drain you, the steady hum of embodied alignment, the kind of coherence that doesn't need to be seen because it already knows, the kind of magnetism that doesn't chase it, simply attracts. And when you become the evidence of your own belief, reality bends, the field responds, and suddenly, things begin to move again. Not because you pushed, but because you paused, because you surrendered without giving up, because you softened, you stayed, you breathed, you trusted, and that trust became your transmission. A signal so clear the universe couldn't ignore it, so strong that timelines had no choice but to shift, so precise that what once felt far became inevitable. That's what's happening right now. Not tomorrow, not when you're finally ready. Now. So if anything in these words sparked something in you, a flicker of peace, of remembering, of relief, let this be your sign. The sign to stop chasing, to start receiving, to stop proving, and start knowing. Let this be the moment you drop into your own center and say, I'm not lost. I'm being aligned. And if this frequency felt like home, if it mirrored something in you that's always been there beneath the noise, beneath the striving, then stay. Stay with this feeling. Stay with yourself. Because nothing about this message found you by accident. It's not coincidence. It's coherence. And coherence is what opens timelines. So breathe. This is your season of preparation. So if no one's told you lately, you're doing better than you think. The quiet progress, the invisible healing, the inner rewiring, It all counts. This path you're on, it's not random. It's not a mistake. It's sacred. And the version of you that's emerging on the other side of this season, the one who walks with clarity, breathes with trust, and radiates from stillness, that version isn't far. They're already within you. You're not here to chase the light. You are the light. So keep softening, keep listening, keep showing up not for the outcome, but for who you become in the process. Because in the quantum field, nothing is wasted. Not your waiting, not your wondering, not even your pain. It's all been preparing you to remember who you really are. And now, it's time to carry that knowing forward. And if this message met you in a moment you needed it most, feel free to share what it stirred in you. You don't have to say much. Even a simple, "I'm ready," or "I trust the process" can be a powerful signal to yourself and to the field. And if this space felt like home, you're always welcome to stay. There's more to come, more remembering, more softening, more becoming.